Rice. I will be one of your co-facilitators today. I'm a second-year biology faculty, and I'm going to introduce my other co-facilitator, Ariel Stevenson. And the Office of Inclusive Excellence. And before we get going, John Rollins, the director of the Black Student Center, wants to make some announcements. You want to come on up?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for being here. As many of you know, the Office of Inclusive Excellence is working with our campus community at the moment around initiatives around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Many of you on the professional side may have been involved in our inventory project that's been happening for the last few weeks. And we had a session on Tuesday where our partners at the Center for Strategic Diversity Leadership and Social Innovation spoke. I know some of my students from the Black Student Center were in there, spoke about what we are going to be doing moving forward. We are about to be launching and hosting community building, listening, and dialogue sessions. Now, these sessions are about 1 hour in length, held virtually. And this is going to help us really listen to the campus community around, what are our strengths, our challenges, and opportunities for improvement in regards to areas around DE&I. Now, these sessions are by either professionals or students and by various identities. So if you look at the QR codes, I believe that you have these on your tables. And you see there's one for faculty, staff, and administration. There's a QR code, and then there's a student QR code. There are about 35 sessions that are going to be happening over the next few weeks. Again, they're virtual, and they happen by various aspects of identity that in working with this, our partners, we've identified areas we need to listen to and want to get engagement from. So students, faculty, staff, and administrators, that means everybody has the opportunity to share. Now, some of you are going to look at these and say, oh, well, I identify as, this particular racial or ethnicity. I identify, with this particular college and things of that nature. You can attend as many of the sessions that fit identities that you hold. Okay, so you have to look at the time, look at the date. On those QRs, there are RSVP links for you to sign up for those dates and times. Again, everything is virtual. Let me repeat that. Everything is virtual. So our hope is that you all will participate. Please make your voices heard and share with our partners, who in turn will share with us ways in which we are doing well around DE&I, and then ways in which we can improve and better our campus community. All right. If you have questions, you can see myself or Ariel Stevenson later on. Thank you.
All right. I'm a little short. Can you see me all right over the podium? All right. So thank you so much for taking the time and the commitment and for really showing up. Look around the room at how many folks showed up for today's conversation. I am super thankful and grateful to be in this college that's committed to these kinds of dialogues. So thank you for showing up for our students. We are very excited to have you all with us for the Black Student Panel today. All right, so before we get going, I want to acknowledge that this event was made possible by cross-campus collaborations with the Black Student Center, Office of Inclusive Excellence, the College of STEM, and Dean Trishman's support of this event, and the Center for Training, Research, and Educational Excellence on campus, so CTRE, and a very thoughtful donation from Biostat, which is financially sponsoring this event. So as I mentioned, I am Dr. Mallory Rice. I'm one of your co-facilitators along with Ariel. Before we get going, I'm going to bring up our lovely Dean, Dr. Trishman, to say a few words.
Thank you, Mallory. Thank you very much. So some of you might know that I went to Scripps Institution of Oceanography as a graduate student. When I first got to Scripps, I met with my curricular advisor, and he advised me, even though the standard was to take 2 classes that quarter, to take 3 classes because the chemical oceanography class in the next quarter was going to be taught by somebody who didn't like to pass women. And he was serious, and he told me, you can choose to fight that and, say, nope, I'm going to be different, or you can take my advice, and you have to make that choice. And it was a real eye-opening experience. I had been used to having 3 or 4 women in my engineering classes at Virginia Tech. That wasn't a shock to me, but that kind of overt sexism was not something I was used to. It made me really uncomfortable. And then I got to Tulane, my first teaching assignment, and I was I was the only woman in a department of 17 faculty, full-time faculty. And I tell you this because when Yetunde first brought this to my attention and really talked to us about how she was feeling in some of her classes and how people had shared with her how what they were experiencing, it brought back all of that anxiety. It brought back all of that questioning. When we think about, when students are questioning, is this the right path for me? We typically think of, when they apply for college and then when they accept, what college did they accept? Did they apply in different majors and they choose the major there? And then they go through their first year and they do kind of some soul searching and say, was this the right choice? And then when they graduate, they say, is this what I want to do? Do I want to go here or there? That's what we think of as the path. When in reality, when you're in situations like that, you're questioning not only daily, but 2-3 times a day, am I in the right place? And that type of questioning is not the environment that we want at Cal State San Marcos. And so I know that from talking with our sponsors, especially Viasat, but also some of our other supporters, that they really look to us to talk about how do we encourage our students as interns and our new employees to bring their whole selves to work, because we know that we need to support that in order for them to be at their most creative selves. And that's what we want. Well, we want the same thing on our campus. We want our students to be at their best selves, and we want them to be their whole selves. And that's not where we are. And frankly, that's just not acceptable, and we need to get there. We're not there yet, but I know that people are in this room because they are committed to getting there, and they want to learn more about how they can help. And I thank you all for helping us to get there together and to really do this, not only for yourselves, but for all of those who come after you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dean Trishman. Next, I'm going to bring up Yetunde Adebayo, the student who really led and organized this entire event, to share a few words before we kick off with some data presentation.
Hello all. As said prior, my name is Yetunde Adebayo. Thank you so much for being here. It really does mean the world to me. I am a third-year biology major with a minor in sociology, and I'm also a fellow TRDRP scholar under the program of CTRI. Thank you. I would really want I just want to thank everyone for coming, for carving the time out of your day. This room is packed, and that means that you guys actually care to make a difference here. So that really means the world to me. Today, my peers and I will be talking about our experiences within STEM, within academia as a whole. Now, this might be a topic that makes some people uncomfortable, but I am a very firm believer of making those who are uncomfortable first, so that we can really get comfortable. Now, I hope that all of us have a chance to take away something today. And I just want to thank everyone who supported me along the way, which really includes Dr. Mallory Rice. She was there to be a listening ear to me, to help me project this. I would like to thank the BSC, John. Thank you so much for supporting me. Thank you, REL, the Office of Inclusive Excellence. Thank you to CTRI as a whole for supporting us, for CTRI. And also thank you to Viasat for giving us the funds. I hope you all enjoy. Thank you.
So today's student panel structure, we are going to learn about the experiences and insights of our Black students majoring in STEM on this campus. We're first going to start off by learning, why are we here? I'll go over some data at the nationwide, the statewide, and Cal State system and CSUSM level to show you why we're having this dialogue today. And then I'm going to introduce our lovely student panelists who are going to come on stage, introduce themselves, give a brief overview of their experiences. And most of our time today is going to be spent in a moderated Q&A between you all, our audience members, and our student panelists to learn how we as the CSUSM community can make their experiences more inclusive on this campus. All right, so kickstarting, why are we here today? So persistent and ongoing exclusion issues in STEM prevent individuals from minoritized groups from pursuing and persisting in these disciplines. And while this impacts all individuals that are from minoritized groups, and I will show you data today disaggregated by race and ethnicity, today's dialogue focuses on the experiences of our Black scholars, students, and colleagues in STEM, and how we as a community can band together to make those experiences more inclusive. This is really important because we need to, we have institutional and systemic barriers that need to be reconciled if STEM is going to become an inclusive space for all individuals who want to pursue these disciplines to thrive, especially for individuals with multiple marginalized identities who face more barriers to persisting in STEM and thus are more likely to become excluded. So again, I'm going to show you data broken down by race and ethnicity, but I want us to keep in mind that individuals can face barriers across sectors of their identity, such as first-generation status, socioeconomic status, gender identity, sexual identity, and many more. And all of these interact to inform an individual's experiences in the world and how they are perceived by others. So why is doing this and having this dialogue important? Because research shows that a diverse group of individuals is better at solving really complex scientific problems than individuals from the same background. And I'd argue more importantly that diversity issues have been around for years, yet we still see systemic exclusion of individuals based on their identities, with race and ethnicity being the biggest predictor of who we see and who we do not see in STEM disciplines. So today, again, we are focusing on the institutional and systemic barriers that affect our Black scholars and colleagues in STEM, and going to learn how we as both a community and individuals can make those experiences more inclusive. I'm going to start by giving you some data at the nationwide, statewide, and our own campus level. And if you are interested in any of these data dashboards, please come talk to us after the event. Either myself or Ariel can direct you to these data dashboards. And Yatunde mentioned being uncomfortable. If today's data or conversation maybe makes you a bit uncomfortable, that is okay and really encouraged and welcomed, because often when we are uncomfortable, we're either learning something new or we're being exposed to it maybe for the first time, and it's challenging what we know. So I'm going to ask you to lean into that feeling, because that's where growth happens, and that's what we're here to do today, right? Grow as a community. And I also want to acknowledge that I'm going to be learning alongside with all of you in today's dialogue with our student panelists. So students, staff, and fellow faculty, I very much look forward to learning with you once we get to our moderated dialogue. All right, so across the US, Black employees in the STEM workforce earn less money than the national average, with Black women earning the least. So this is an example of how multiple marginalized identities and multiple systems of oppression, right, sexism and racism, are negatively influencing the earning potential of Black women in our country. Also at the national level and across the US, Black graduates with a STEM degree are less likely to get a job in the STEM workforce. And this is across STEM health, STEM right sectors relative to other racial and ethnic groups. So even if Black students are able to overcome those systemic barriers they face to getting a degree, they're less likely to get a job. And if they do get a job, they're likely earning less than the national average, right? These are compounding systems of oppression. And at a national level, Black students receive fewer STEM degrees at all levels of higher education in STEM relative to their population size in the US. So this plot on the y-axis shows the percent in blue of the US population, and yellow, STEM undergraduate degrees earned, in gray, the percent of STEM master's degree earned, and yellow, the percent of STEM doctoral degrees earned. So at all levels of higher education, we are losing Black scholars. And this has major consequences about who we see in graduate programs and who we see working as faculty in 2- and 4-year institutions like our own. All right, so we're going to start zooming into the Cal State system. So this plot I'm going to show you are 6-year graduation rates across the Cal State University system. And the y-axis is the 6-year graduation rate, which is the percent of either Black or white students that are entering as first-time freshmen as a declared STEM major who earn a STEM degree within that 6-year period. And if we take averages of this data over this 15-year period between 2000 and 2015, Only 16% of Black students who enter as a freshman as a declared STEM major are earning a STEM degree within 6 years, compared to 44% of white students. And overall, these rates are pretty low, and that we really need to do more to support all of our students completing their STEM degree. And although these rates increase similarly over time, there's still a gap. And this data tells me that we as a community have a responsibility to face these persistent issues that our Black scholars are facing when they're completing their STEM degrees. And that we really need to do more to close those gaps. And although this is at the Cal State level, we do see similar patterns at our own institution. And to kind of understand some of those patterns a bit more, our university participated in a campus-wide climate survey report, which was sent out to all undergraduate students in the spring of 2021. There was about a 10% response rate, so 10% of our undergraduate students participated in that survey. And so now we're going to zoom in even further into our own campus. So in that data, only 64% of Black students that participated in this campus climate survey shared that they feel like they belong to our campus. And while all students should absolutely feel like they belong to CSUSM, our Black and African American students felt like they belonged less relative to most other racial and ethnic groups. And again, we want to keep in mind this is representative of about 10% of our undergraduate population. And at the time and currently, only 3% of our CSTEM population are Black and African American scholars, when 85% of our students come from the region, which is 7% Black and African American. All right, so I'm going to zoom us in a little bit further in thinking about our College of STEM. So nearly 20% of Black students who filled out the survey also agreed that this college has a lot of racial tension. So more Black and African American students on this campus feel this relative to any other group surveyed. And thinking about our College of STEM, more than 80% of Black students majoring in STEM who filled this out at the time agree that it will take them longer to graduate than they had initially planned. More than any other group, 80% of students agreed with this statement. Right, and this has major financial consequences. If you're taking longer to graduate, you're not earning money in the workforce when you're already earning less than the national average. You're probably taking out student loans, which is a heavy debt burden, right? So these lead to some financial equity gaps as well. And 2/3 of Black students who also filled out the survey shared that they feel they need to work harder than other students to be perceived as a good student. Again, more of our Black and African American students agree with this statement relative to any other group. So as we think about this, how can we as a community of educators really use this data to be reflective of the classroom environments in our college? And lastly, nearly 70% of Black students majoring in STEM shared they do not feel comfortable contributing to class discussions. So that's a really striking difference to me. Right, far more of our Black and African American students do not feel comfortable sharing in our classes relative to any other group, almost double the amount. And we want to keep in mind, right, those who completed the survey, those students felt comfortable sharing their experiences. So we're likely not capturing students who both don't feel comfortable talking in class and don't feel comfortable sharing their experiences and insights at the university level through this survey, right? All right, so I've shown you a lot of data at the nationwide, statewide, campus, and CSTEM level about the experiences of Black scholars in STEM. And now we're going to pivot and focus the rest of our time on learning about what are the experiences of Black students in CSTEM and what can we do at CSUSM to create a more inclusive environment for our Black students. All right, so at this time, I would very much like to bring up our lovely 4 student panelists to the stage who are going to introduce themselves, and then we will go into a moderated Q&A. There are index cards at each of your tables with pens. If you have questions, please fill them out, and either John or Kenneth, one of our other volunteers, will come around and collect them. Just raise your hand if you have a completed card. And let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. I think you painted where we are globally, nationally in our system, and currently on our local campus. The climate survey data is available on the OIE website. And I want to make sure that I say, as a part of the climate group, there were students who wanted to make sure that the data was accountable and transparent. And so that is why we're sharing it on the website in all of our reports, because students asked us to do so. So I think that says a lot about how students care about this information, how they care about the data, and about the students before us. I'm going to have each of the students introduce themselves at this time.
I'm Sage Gideon. I'm a fourth year biology major.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jameson Stalter. I'm a third year here on campus. I'm a computer science major.
Hi, I'm Alexis. I'm a fourth year biology major.
Hi, I'm Yatunde Adebayo. I'm a third year biology major, and I am here. Thank you.
I would like each of you to share why you chose a major in CSTEM.
I chose a major in CSTEM just because I grew up knowing I was gonna be a scientist. Like, I have been saying since I was in first grade. It's been my dream to be a scientist. So this is the little Black girl, I'm a scientist, and I'm so happy.
I decided to go into CSTEM after my military career because I wanted to be part of something that's always changing and adapting. I've always been interested in computers, so that was just the right journey for me.
I chose to major in CSTEM. I always had an interest in like biology and science as a kid, but I was always discouraged. But then my high school teacher, my senior year was like, just apply. And if you get in, that's a sign. And I did, and I got in, so.
I chose a major in STEM because growing up, I was always surrounded by people who were in the healthcare industry. And it always inspired me, and it made me feel as if like I wanted to go and get my degree in STEM so I could impact others the same way that they impacted me in a positive way.
Alexis, you shared a little bit, but briefly, that you were originally discouraged from the field. Would you mind expanding upon that?
So I was always just discouraged just because like I was okay at science, but I wasn't like amazing at it. And I always had interest in, I always had passion, I always like a bunch of questions, but I wasn't really like, I was always told like, you could just do like nursing, or you can just do like something else like business. If you want to do like medical, like work at like the business side of like a hospital, don't really like do science. So just like stuff like that in terms of like being discouraged. So just little stuff when I showed interest.
Does anyone else have a story where they ever felt discouraged about being in a science major? Yatunde?
Personally, I have been discouraged a million of times, ranging from tiny aggressions that people have made at me because I said that I wanted to go into the healthcare field, which is very competitive as we all know. People have told me that I wouldn't be a perfect fit or that I wouldn't be good enough basically at what I was trying to do. And it's hard because when people tell you these things, they really get to you, especially when people don't believe in you from the very beginning.
Sage, did you want to add to that, you or Jameson?
Yes, my freshman year of college, actually, it was my freshman year of college, and I was actually a biochem major before I became biology. And I went to the teacher's office hours in chemistry, and I specifically remember him saying, you should not be a chemistry major because you're not good at this. You should do something else. You should figure something else. And I mean, I've been discouraged and there's been other microaggressions, but I remember that. And not too long after that, I did change my major to a different major, which is biology, but that's been forever embedded in my brain that I shouldn't be in science.
This is kind of a more difficult question for me to answer because I've been very supported throughout my career here on campus. I've always been kind of encouraged to, go after whatever I need to get after, especially since I have the privilege of going to college after my military career. And, everyone is just always supporting me to get as far as I can.
Thank you, Jameson. Diversity in stories is okay. I just wanted to connect with Dr. Rice had originally said when she talked about there are barriers even to be in the major at the very beginning of the presentation. And so their shared story saying that discouragement is showing an example of those barriers. I myself was a biochem major. My first 2 years getting all A's. My professors did not like me. They were not nice to me. And I left because they were not nice. And when I that's how I expressed it, but it was because I had those similar feelings. I felt discouraged in the lab. I felt discouraged just going to office hours, because even though I did well, it was never an opportunity for someone to say, keep going. And so when I had the first opportunity to leave the major, I did. And my parents were upset, right? Because it means something in Black communities when you are in STEM majors. It means something in many communities, right? We know prestige and sciences in our society is important, but it means something for Black culture and Black families. When parents and Black families send their students to us, they are the future and they are the anchors of their family. So when they come to us in our institutions, the families expect us to carry their dreams forward, right? Keep their spirits up, right? Dr. Bettina Love talks about spirit murdering, if you ever know her work, and that sometimes in classrooms we do spirit murdering. And so when we hold barriers for students when they say they're being prevented or discouraged early on, remember they're now in those fields because despite those barriers, they pressed on, which is important. So when they show up in your classrooms, those are some of their stories already. So just noting that. Jameson talked already about feeling supported as a student at CSUSM. So I want each of you, if you can, also talk about ways you felt safe and supported as a Black student at Cal State San Marcos, because I think that's also important. It tells you, well, go ahead, you'll tell us.
I've had some amazing teachers they're in this room today. Amazing. And I'll just put you on the spot. Professor Ayers, amazing. Dr. Mallory Rice, amazing. Dr. Kolosov, Dr. Bruce, amazing. Each of these teachers carry the characteristics of really taking their time and going out their way to make me feel comfortable, make me feel welcome, willing to go through those steps, allowing their door to be open during office hours, or allowing me to ask questions, because I have a lot of questions because I'm not that experienced in the lab. So I am so thankful for these professors. There's just a few, there's a couple missing. I can't see right now, but these are just a few professors that made a really big impact on me. And I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, for myself, I came to campus 2020 when COVID was full swing. Eventually finally coming onto campus in last spring semester on campus. And that's when I discovered the Black Student Center, the Black Student Union. And that support alone has, really given me a lot of life as for my journey as a student on campus alone. And then even in the classroom, my professors in my computer science, they're always trying to connect with the students, trying to get to know them, find out their personalities. They're always doing the most to, make everyone feel comfortable and have a relationship with them.
So for me, I've also had a few great professors on this campus. Sage mentions with Dr. Rice especially. So I've mainly got my support though from the Black Student Center, and mainly from like my little group of friends who honestly support me. And like I don't know how I would have gone through without them, because it was rough, especially with the pandemic. Yeah, that's really where I got my support from.
Some places where I have gotten my support from would be from professors who really showed that they cared about me being a person before a student. I feel like sometimes in STEM, people forget that the students have their own lives. We have things that we deal with on a daily basis. And me personally, I have so many things going on. And when I was in Dr. Rice's class last semester, I walked into her office hours and I was like, terrified and I just had so many questions. I didn't know how to connect with my peers, but she made sure that we had all these resources in our syllabi. She made sure to remind us like, to, you know, take care of ourselves. And that was especially important. Another place where I got my support from would be friends in the center, in the Black Student Center, people like Alexis. I remember last semester, I was going through like a rough patch overall. And that's how life is, and that's expected. But people who are other Black STEM scholars, they are really going to be there for you to help push you through and see that you succeed. And I think that's so important. And having offices like, for example, C-Tree that really care about your welfare as a whole and make sure that you're okay is beneficial to the student because it helps remind us that we are cared of.
Thank you. And I just want to note, it's super important that we have Black professors on campus, but note that the students noted who cared for them, and none of those professors, none of those faculty members were Black. And so noting that you can care for your students and not have to necessarily identify directly with them to care for them and support them is an important takeaway that I just want to note, because I know some folks, or I've heard, not necessarily on this campus, and the data that some faculty feel like they can't support the students in the same way if they're of a different gender or race, ethnicity, right? And we know not to be true here because we know the students that we serve and how important they are to our campus environment. So just noting the great professors that the faculty, that the students have, the faculty that the students have named is very important. I also want to move to this next question. And it talks about asking the students to talk about ways where they haven't felt safe or supported in CSTEM. They don't have to name a particular person. That's not what we're doing here, or a particular class. But I want them to share if they have any experiences that they've had, because I think that's where some learning can come in. And there might be students in this space who may not be in CSTEM who've had similar experiences and may need to be validated as well. So noting that. So I'll repeat the question. If you want to talk about some ways where you haven't felt safe or supported on campus or in CSTEM, you can do that without naming any names, any specific classrooms. But if you need to report anything, I'm sure Dean Frischman would be happy to hear directly from you.
Personally, I think that, like I said in the beginning, the slight demeanor that some faculty may carry towards students means a lot. As a student, like I'm looking at you for a good hour or two, and if you have like a very dismissive tone, if you don't really like want to get to know about your students, it does make me feel a bit apprehensive about approaching you, and I don't really feel support. I have a quote here, and it says that if you are Black, you may have the drive, you may have the passion, but you also have the deficiency, that you were born of differential opportunities. So I would really appreciate it if more people were aware that sometimes we don't always come from the same background. We might not know how to do something in a lab. And if we're coming to you and asking you questions, I would want to expect that you are willing to teach us with an open mind and an open heart. I'm not expected to know everything, which is understandable, but those little minuscule and exchanges you have with your students means a lot, and we will forever remember them. So I think that is very impactful for all students across campus.
Okay, so a specific experience that I've had, oh my God, that made no sense. A specific something that I experienced specifically from one of my courses was in a lab, and it was post-pandemic. And it was a really hard class. And one of the teachers was really kind of aggressive at times. And I remember there was one time we were asking a bunch of questions, the whole class. And one kid, a white guy, walked up to the teacher and they were really okay, well, this is how you do this. Remember this from lecture? Okay, now show me how you do it. Really trying to help them and encouraging them. And then when I asked the question, it was very similar. They're like, what do you mean you don't understand? Sorry, what do you mean you understand? We just went over in lecture. And I was like, I'm confused. And they're just being really passive aggressive. And then it was starting to become a pattern where, for example, a girl She was Muslim, and she asked a question, and the teacher was also like very like passive aggressive, very rude to her, and she actually walked out of class crying. And it was like a very like normal thing where you see like another student like walking out, or a woman's walking out, or even me. I think I walked out and cried in John's office a couple times. It was that's just like a time where I didn't feel safe and comfortable in one of my classes.
Just one moment. I just want people to meditate on that. Because that was an experience that you had here, right? So 2 stories were shared. Students said by tone, by willingness to help, by willingness to take the time with them when they didn't understand something, right? And sometimes I know people say, well, you can't, we don't know if that was directly whatever, based on their race, based on their gender. All I know is a student knows how they feel when they walk away from that experience, and that's what matters, right? So if you can't call it specifically racism, gender, whatever, a student walking away feeling unsupported, that they don't matter, that's problematic, right? Any student that's ever had that kind of experience at Cal State San Marcos, the Office of Inclusive Excellence wants to know about it so we can partner to do work, right? We want to make sure that the classroom environment is a supportive environment, that the classroom environment is a welcoming and inclusive environment, right? Sage or Jameson, if you have something to share.
So this is another difficult question for me because I understand I have a privilege of being a fair-skinned male, and I've been fairly supported throughout my career so far versus, the other panelists on here. And I think that's just a pretty stark reflection of, just of how skin color of me being, appearing more white than other students.
Thank you. I will make sure that when we share the PowerPoint, that I make sure that I share information around colorism in the Black community. Students who are normally darker have different experiences when they're Black than students who are lighter. So thank you, Jameson, for sharing that. Women of color who are darker, especially Black women who are dark skinned, have the hardest experience sometimes. And so there's data to support that as well for those who need data. I know I'm in a CSTEM event, so I want to make sure I have the data for folks. But also just knowing that one student's experience is also data that matters. So noting that as well. Thank you, Jameson.
I have a similar story, just like the 2 girls with the questions, asking a question. And I've had a professor in class, I go to her office hours every day, and she literally told me, yes, Sage, like, I know you have a question, like with the like that type of tone. And I was like, okay, like, and so it made me not want to ask any more questions. Having a professor just act like I was annoying them. This was in front of the whole class, so it kind of embarrassed me, and like I felt like people were snickering. And so I've had professors, I feel like they're picking on the other students in the class, and I'm the last person to get my question answered, even though I was the first one with my hand up, and it's a little discouraging.
Yes, it is, Sage, but I'm gonna be what I know that Black families say, some of them, I can't represent all of them, that you ask every single question that you need to get every piece of information that you ever need to do what you need to do to be successful. So if someone is annoyed or someone is bothered by it, that's okay, that's on them. You get what you need to get. Okay? So can you all tell me what it looks like, maybe what it feels like when you know a professor listens to you or supports you, that they care about you and your success as a Black student?
Yeah, I think it's really obvious when a teacher like really cares about their students. They go out of their way to, learn everyone's names regardless of the size. They, follow up, how your weekend was, how you're doing in life, versus a professor who just shows up to collect his check every month.
Or her check, or their check. This is
Period.
I think when a professor looks at you as a human and not just as a student, especially with the times that we have been in with online learning and
I think that it's easy for me to tell if a professor really cares about me by, once again, their tone and them reaching out to students and like trying to connect with them on a interpersonal level. I'm not saying you have to like tell me your life story and everything. Like we can go to office hours if need be, but I really do appreciate it when professors like make sure that we're okay, make sure that we're understanding material, and like they make sure that we're just like doing okay physically, mentally, everything. Because sometimes during the semester it gets rough for students and we sometimes don't know where to go. We have so many resources on campus, but sometimes we still don't know where to go. So if I go to a professor and ask them, oh, like, where do I go to like, I don't know, get some help on some financial stuff, or where can I go to get some tutoring? You can easily offer them advice and like say, oh, like there's this the extended learning building and everything, instead of like, you know, dismissing them away from your attention.
It feels good to have a professor that cares. I mean, like everybody said, like it feels good when they recognize that you're human, that you have a million other things to do outside of the class, that they prioritize that you are human first and student second, and you have to have all your personal needs met first before school. And I mean, when teachers reach out, when they greet us, when they learn our names, when they pronounce my name correctly and spell my name correctly, it makes a difference, because those little details I recognize and I look for when I meet new people or professors.
Thank you. We have some questions on the cards. I'm gonna let Dr. Rice lead those questions at this time.
All right, so the first question from our audience are, what barriers of any type have surprised you the most in your journey so far?
For me personally, tutoring at the STEM Center, many times, especially for the computer science tutors, there's simply not enough tutors, and you wait, whether you're on person or on Zoom, 30 to an hour just to get into a spot with a tutor.
I think for me, one of the things that I really like, a barrier, I guess, would be the lack of diversity within faculty. It's hard for me to go to any professor if they're not like, if they don't fit the criteria, if they don't care about me as a student. Having enough lack of representation in STEM already makes it hard enough for me to even like, you know, want to stay in my major sometimes, because when things get rough, they get rough. Like, but regardless, I think that having a lack of diversity, especially within like STEM faculty, it makes it hard for me, because it makes it difficult for me to like go out of my way sometimes and say to a professor like my life situation, because they might not be able to understand because not everyone's aware. I think another barrier would be like, sometimes it doesn't feel as if I feel welcome in my own classroom, because I usually am the only Black student in my class and everyone seems to stare at me, and I do notice when they stare at me. It's something that I didn't expect to continue in a higher institution, my bad, because I already experienced it for so many years. But coming to university, I did expect there to be like a little bit more diversity within STEM. But having to go to classrooms and being the only Black student, like it feels like you have to perform harder, work harder, prove yourself more. And it gets very difficult at times.
And going off on what you said about being the only Black person or Black student in the class, like you also get looked at as like the dumb Black girl, especially if you don't know the answer, you don't really understand, like if you're confused on certain things. So that's another barrier that I want to go off on, or yeah. And also just we really need diversity, really need that support, and just like I said earlier, to look at us like we're human. We're not just, yes, I'm a Black person, but like I'm more than that. I'm a student. I'm more than that, you know? So yeah.
I feel like a barrier just goes, I would just say, I'm just gonna repeat the same thing as them, like being the only Black student in the classroom, no Black faculty, noticing that there's little to no Black males in biology, and or even my chemistry classes, the ones that I've taken. It's just surprising.
Right. Thank you for sharing. So I heard a lot of representation, both within the class as peers and at the faculty level, which is a good segue into this next question from the audience. What would it mean for you to have a Black STEM professor, especially if you were starting out with one as a first year student?
I personally will have so many questions, like how did you get here? How was your experience growing up? I would be glad to see it because I personally don't have anybody in my family who's in STEM. I don't personally know any scientists, actually, except for the professors here. So it would be nice to see somebody that looks like me.
Yeah, so the major theme is, representation matters, and seeing a Black professor would be like pretty like game changing, because it was like, wow, like if he or she or they can make it, I can too.
Basically what they all just said. It just feels nice to be seen and to see people in the position that you want to be in. And it's also like comforting because if I do have a question, I feel comfortable asking that because I in the past I have asked questions about certain things about my future, and I've once again felt discouraged by even just going up to certain individuals. So
I think that if I were to have a faculty member that was like in STEM, I would be in awe, honestly, because I would have the opportunity to ask them about so many things like they navigated through that I will also have to navigate through as well. Not everyone knows how to conduct themselves in interviews. Not everyone knows how to do everything that it takes to lead up to certain places like medical school, PA school, PhD, whatever degree or thing you choose to achieve in life. Sometimes we don't know, and having a person that has already gone through all those steps would be an amazing way to connect you with other people, help you network, help you establish like a solid foundation for what you need to do overall in STEM.
Right. So really having someone that can mentor you through that experience of whatever your career goals might be, someone who can relate and help guide you through. So kind of keeping with that theme and kind of moving a bit more to the classroom, what would make you feel more comfortable with participating in in-class discussions? I think this question is really, how can faculty make a more inclusive and supportive space for you all to feel safer to participate in class discussions? Or is there a different way to structure in-class discussion?
I feel like the best way, in my opinion, to have in-class discussions and make me feel more encouraged is when I'm asking questions before any discussion, that their demeanor is like not poor towards me and I feel welcome. Or I feel like when I answer a question that I'm kind of like not being told like I'm dumb because I'm wrong, but more so like lead me to the right direction and challenge me to know more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So using your responses in an in-class discussion to help guide rather than say, oh, that's incorrect or that's not the right way of thinking about something, but using what you're saying to help lead that dialogue in class.
Yeah, much like how Sage said, like just if a student does get something wrong, encouraging them like, oh, like, no, that's just wrong. And now you look, kind of dumb in front of everyone. But, it's also like you can't force the students to like want to answer in an open discussion like that. So you got to make them feel comfortable to want to open up for discussion as well, which can be difficult because, like I said, you can't force a student to speak if they don't want to.
So everything that they just said, of course, and the environment, like we said earlier, like what makes our environment feel welcoming and just want to learn and just a good environment. The professor has a really huge influence on that. So I stress that when of course, made me want to answer questions. Also, when it comes to the material in class, no student that already knows some of the stuff because science really builds off each other. And I remember being my first year in like my beginner like chemistry class and like, well, you should have known this, learned this in high school. And I was like, I didn't. That's why I'm here. So that also is helpful and just willing to also, just in case if I don't know or I don't remember, to help me and just help me grow as a student.
For me personally, I think that once again, tone, demeanor is excruciatingly important. When a teacher doesn't care, when a professor does not care, the students don't care. And when a professor does not clarify how to talk to other peers in the classroom, students will find a way to do it themselves. Unfortunately, I've had some conversations with people within my lecture, my labs, and I just leave the class wondering why I even said something because it felt as if I was being dismissed because the professor did not clarify that you need to be respectful of other people in your group. I think clarifying that you need to be respectful and you need to be polite and you should not be, placing stereotypes upon people and everything. You should not bring some negative things into class. That would be very important and that would be amazing. And I think that the demeanor, like the professor should provide a welcoming environment that helps students settle in and make them want to actually talk. Because sometimes if a professor, like Jefferson said earlier, is just there to, work and not actually care about the students can tell. We're able to read each other's body language and we can tell that you don't want to be there. So if we know that you don't want to be there, we're not going to want to be there either. And we're not going to want to talk to our classmates in a respectful manner. So I think that's really important.
So I'm hearing a lot of both really like classroom environment and both the instructor demeanor, but also setting some class cultural norms for how we communicate within groups, how groups dialogue with one another, the expectations of when we're working in groups, how we show up respectfully for one another, how we engage in respectful academic dialogue. Yeah, okay. All right, and then how do we help our Black students transition from CSTEM to the workforce or PhD or allied health professions? So what would help you all most, and what would be some of your recommendations for how we as a CSTEM community can best support you towards your postgraduate career goals?
Well, if you haven't heard of C-Tree, it's an amazing opportunity on campus to get into. Because they help train you to, there's so many programs. Just look up C-Tree on CSUSM website or visit Giovanni. He can answer all your questions. That's a really good program. Internships. I think I forgot, I get emails from somebody with internships. So that's really good. Professors bringing in people who are going into the career or explaining their own career, how they got where they're at. I feel like that would be really cool.
Yeah, I think just overall, just encouraging students to kind of step out of their safety bubble and to go to the workshops, to go to internship opportunities, to work with professionals, and really get their network set up. So when they are ready to transition out, they're prepared. They have people that they need, that they can talk to, and all those kind of things.
For me personally, when I first started my journey here at CSUSM, I was a pre-med student, and when I went to someone to ask okay, how am I going to get to med school? Because that's the end goal. And that's when I started getting discouraged. So I did a lot of my own pre-med stuff by myself and looked up online. So I think just willingness to listen to that student and give them opportunities. If you know about, like James said, a workshop or know about an internship that's being opened up for applications, let them know about it and encourage them to apply. And
I think that ways that people could get better networking abilities is by professors even telling their students that like these resources are available. I got introduced to C-Tree, formerly known as OTRES, by Professor Rice last semester. I had no idea what it was prior. I did not even know it existed. And so when I went there, I talked to Giovanni and I realized like we had so many opportunities that people were not aware of on campus. And I don't know if people are not like talking about it in their classrooms or not, but I think offering those kind of, reasons to go to OTRES or C-Tree, my bad. I think offering the incentive to go to C-Tree as a whole would be amazing to students, because I'm now in the TRDRP Scholar program and I'm going to be conducting research for 2 years. So that's something that I need for my major, and some other people in bio might not even know that exists. So that would be very beneficial.
All right, so I'm hearing a lot of very positive things about C-Tree. And maybe helping students build networks, helping expose them to more careers, maybe in class. I'm going to throw out the idea of career panels. Maybe integrating those into some of our classrooms might be a good way to show students a variety of careers that they can do with their STEM degree. All right, so our next question from the audience is thinking more about interactions with peers. So you talked a little bit during in-class discussions about how building class norms and really establishing some expectations of how we dialogue is important. So this question is kind of getting at how have the interactions, either positive or negative, with other students in STEM classes contributed to how you interact in class? And do you feel a sense of support from your peers?
Yeah, so for me, myself, we work in groups all the time, and I definitely don't think I would have made it as far as I have so far if it wasn't for making connections with other students and supporting each other in and outside of the classroom to, if we get stuck on a problem or we don't understand a concept and we're not able to go to office hours or the STEM center, being able to connect with other students is game changing.
I think having experiences in the classroom, positive or negative, really makes or break the fact if you really want to participate in that class ever again. Because if you have an encounter with people in your class that is more on the negative side, I'm not going to want to participate in the class anymore. It feels difficult for me to even participate in the class because it feels my peers don't take me seriously and the professor did not care enough to even interject that conversation that was hurtful to me. If I have a positive experience where I get to network with my students and everything, and I get to talk to them, and we get to do study groups, I feel motivated to try harder in my class. I feel motivated to pass. I feel motivated to do better in my class because my peers are helping me do better. Last semester, I will keep on mentioning this. I had the hardest time in one of my biology classes. But if I didn't have the support of Alexis and some other peers in my class, I don't know if I would have even passed because it was so difficult. I literally had to ask them for help, but they were there for me. And having that kind of backbone that you can like rely on other students for help is very important. And it really does make or break your career as a whole.
It's everything that pretty much that they all said. Your peers can, along with your professor, can really make or break that experience that you have in that classroom. Having, like I said, like Yetunde in my class last semester was really helpful because I knew someone, I felt comfortable with someone, I'd be like, girl, please help me, send help. And even Sage, like that support is really important and it actually helped me get through a lot of tough classes. Throughout my time here. So your peers, my peers are important. And I hope, that we need to build.
All I can say is that, peers can make or break. I mean, if your peers are racist, then you're going to be quiet. If your peers are nice and open to conversation, then you're going to be open. And I feel like, it does help. It does either can encourage me or discourage me from participating in classroom discussions or even group discussions or projects too.
So I really appreciate that Sage named it, right? If students in our class are racist, I'm going to say that it is our job as instructors to shut that down and call it out and to not tolerate that kind of dialogue and treatment of our students in our classrooms. And I know the Faculty Center puts on workshops. Jackie puts on a really great implicit bias workshop to start getting that training on how we can have those dialogues and call people in. And I really encourage folks to participate in those. I also say faculty, there is Academics for Black Survival and Wellness. They have workshops online. You can use your PD money. It's only a couple $100. Really highly recommend that training. There's a lot of pedagogy training about how to navigate building more supportive peer interactions. So this question, I believe, is from a faculty. So it asks, when I have a Black student in class, I get excited for them to be there, and I make a specific effort to connect, knowing the challenges that student has faced to get to this point. But how does this attention come off to you? I worry this effort might not be welcomed. And a reminder, you are welcome to skip any questions that you want as well.
I feel like I'm glad when professors are showing that they care. I would just advise this person not to do too much, like draw too much attention to, like you're specifically trying to make them feel like they're super special or whatever, but just everything has their limits. So I appreciate when I hear a professor going out their way, because it helps. So yeah.
Yeah, well, like Sage said, like whoever wrote that, thank you, like obviously you never want to be the student that feels like they're getting their hand held, but at the same time, like just knowing that as a professor, as a teacher, as an educator, that like you're an ally, for all students, not just Black students, means the difference.
Well, what they said, yeah, I don't like being in the middle. Basically, what they said, like, yes, favoritism can happen. That's kind of normal, but don't make it obvious. Don't be like, oh well, this person is amazing, but y'all suck. Don't do that. But just encourage all your students. Say that you believe in them, because there's gonna be times throughout the semester where they don't believe in themselves, especially as midterms happen, because that's a crazy time. Just be like, I believe in you, material, you got this, just something like that. Just encourage your students.
To whoever wrote that, I really do appreciate that question, because I feel like it's something that people don't want to ask, but like it's in the back of their heads. Like, how do I show my Black students that I care for them and I want to see them win, but I don't want to single them out? I don't think that you have to shower them with affection. You don't have to single them out in class and say, oh, well, Yetunde here did amazing. Like, you don't have to do that. You can do it in you can support everybody, and you can still support the Black student in the class. It doesn't mean that you have to single the person out. I do believe that showing continuous support means a lot to that person. I can't speak for everyone, but I think that it means a lot, because it's very encouraging knowing that I have come so far through so many struggles and challenges, and I still have like my professor's support behind me. That really does mean the world to me. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so welcoming students in, getting to know them, valuing their contributions to class without singling anyone out is what I'm hearing. All right, thank you for those suggestions for us in the room who teach, including myself. In the classroom, have you had any negative experiences with other students? And specifically, did anyone do anything about it if they saw? And if not, what would you have liked to have seen done? You can skip any questions you're not comfortable with.
If a situation were to erupt in a classroom, I would expect the teacher to like shut it down immediately and like blatantly say to everyone, like, this isn't like, that's not acceptable behavior, such and such. I'm not really, I don't know all the like disciplinary actions of like, of how far, like if it's removing a student from that classroom or like, moving them to a different class because they've made other students feel comfortable. But I would expect the teacher like then and there to like put their foot down and make it clear that what is and isn't acceptable.
I have unfortunately had to deal with some racist issues among my classes, or class, sorry. And the professor, I don't think he knew about it, and I didn't tell him, mainly because it was the last class of the semester and I didn't really feel like going out of my way and like telling the professor. But it was something that I had to shut down, unfortunately, which was very taxing on me mentally, because I was very frustrated that I had to do it. the student in my class was mentioning all these stereotypes about people, saying that a certain racial group were XYZ. And I was just like, I think we need to stop talking about this and focus on what we should be actually doing, which is our work. So the fact that I had to do that, it was really sad. It made me very disappointed because I didn't, it's not something that anyone should have to go through, honestly. It breaks my heart that I had to go through that. The reason why I didn't tell the professor was mainly because I feel as if he wouldn't understand, unfortunately. And I've had too many experiences that I can count where I feel the need to express it to a person, but I cannot properly vent about the experience to a person because I feel like they wouldn't properly understand where I'm coming from. And I was not sure that there would be any disciplinary action for the individual who was saying all that mess. So yeah, unfortunately, I have had that happen to me.
I too have experienced this too. I've had some negative racist microaggressions, not from my peers and my professors. Because we're on the topic of students, I remember I got a B on this geography test. It was over Africa. We had to like name all the countries and mountains and stuff like that. This girl next to me goes, "I'm surprised you need an A because you're from Africa." And I was like, I'm not from, well, I'm a descendant from Africa, but I'm not from Africa. And what is that supposed to mean? Like, all I could do is my mouth drop. And I couldn't believe it. Like, I was like, I can't believe it. Like, this is somebody that's my own age making this remark. I wouldn't even expect it. And I've had other experiences like Yetunde that are more than the fingers in my hand to name all of them, but I've never told the professor because I did feel like they wouldn't understand me or it would be flipped around, and I didn't want to be put in that spot. Also, I felt like I didn't want my peers to feel like I'm a snitch. So just to put it in simple terms, I didn't want them to feel like I'm already trying to fit in, so I'm not trying to tattletale on them. When I'm in college, I should be able to fight my own battles. But if a professor saw that, I would appreciate if they did step in and make it known that it's not tolerable.
Well, it wasn't like that, but I've had experienced microaggressions mainly, nothing like that. Oh my God, thank God. But I have experienced microaggressions from other students. I remember we finished taking an exam and I got like a C plus, like B minus on it. And everyone else got like A's on it, A's and like high B's. And this girl next to me was all like, are you sure you want to do this? I mean, this is supposed to be the easiest exam in the class. And I don't think you can handle the rigors of being a STEM student. I mean, it's normal for Black people to like just kind of like going off. I was like, okay. Okay. But yeah, that's just my story.
So I am so sorry that you have had those experiences. And I know that the Office of Inclusive Excellence is there for you. If you have them, please do report them to the Office of Inclusive Excellence. Our dean is here for you if you have them. Again, I'm so sorry that you've had to experience that racism from peers and not felt comfortable enough, safe enough to approach instructors about them.
I always encourage faculty, I encourage faculty always to remember that you're a facilitator and a guide in a thank you. That you're a facilitator and a guide in the classroom. I always recall this one experience, and I'm not picking on OChem, but this was my experience. I had a professor, and when I went into the classroom, he said, okay, this will be the hardest class. It will make or break you, and more than half of you will fail. And I just thought, if someone approached the class and said, this class is a difficult class, but I am a facilitator and a guide to make sure that I can do my best to teach you to get everything that you can get from the class in the best way forward, that is a different approach, right? I think that's a different experience for students to say, yes, we know the class is difficult, but my professor is a facilitator to help me get at least what they can give me as best as they can, right? So even noting that seems like something small, but you know, we're trying to get away from those prior days when people invited students of color to classes and said, look to your left, look to your right, only one of you will graduate. No, no, no. Not at Cal State San Marcos. We say, look to your left, look to your right. Let's be a community and do this together. And let's be guides and facilitators for one another, right? So just trying to shape and change those narratives, I also think are important, especially in fields such as CSTEM.
Right. Thank you, Ariel. All right, so unfortunately our time together is wrapping up. And so we want to end thinking about how we as a community and individuals can take some of what you're sharing and move it into actionable items to create more inclusive spaces in our classrooms, in our lab settings, how we interact with peers, colleagues. And so what is the suggestion you have for the CSUSM community to make your experience more supportive and inclusive?
I think that by diversifying our faculty, that would be like a great way to start. And maybe reaching out to like, you know, more places that Black students tend to frequent. For example, like, I don't know, having a person come into the BSC and talk to some students that are maybe considering joining the CSTEM community, because some freshmen come in and like they're actually they don't have a major just yet. So like having things like that would be very helpful. Or maybe even just reaching out to people in high school near us, like the Black students over there, because so many Black students have come into me that are like coming to our school and they're unsure about staying in STEM because they know that it's difficult. It can be done. Nothing is impossible. It can be done, but they know that it's difficult and they already know that within STEM, there's a lack of diversity. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, much like what Yatunde said, like just reaching out, especially to transfer and incoming students, like to encourage more Black students to want to come to San Marcos, to let them know that not only are they welcomed here, like that they're also supported, and that, you know, we want to build our community larger and bigger.
I feel like it starts before college, just reaching out to high schools and when students are still figuring out what they want to do. And letting them know that STEM is a welcoming environment here at CSUSM. And also, it would be really nice if when I go in the classroom that there's a tone set in the beginning. So for everybody, not just for Black students, but for students from all backgrounds.
So having conversations like this is also a great starting point. Thank you, girl. It's a great starting point because you're willing to learn and you're willing to help out the students that you currently have in your classes, your Black students, and even your other students of color. Like you're willing to help, willing to learn, and willing to learn ways to guide them and help them through their time here at CSUSM. But also reaching out is important. Reaching out to other, like they mentioned earlier, high schools, transfer students, and say like, you can do this, and instilling like that belief that just because you are not as represented in this program and in this college or in this field, you doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to do this. So, yeah.
So I'm hearing diversifying our faculty, intentionally reaching out to students at the BSC, which is in this building on the fourth floor. I know floors, fourth floor. So faculty, maybe go introduce yourselves, meet some of the students, reaching out to transfer students, freshmen, trying to bring them into our college, reaching out to high school students to encourage them to come work to take classes here, come be a student here, come learn with us, which is an initiative our dean is actually starting to lead within our departments. And lastly, before we wrap up, as a Black student, what do you think you need to succeed at CSUSM and CSTEM majors? What can we do to support that?
So I think it can be summed up into a couple words. Like you need courage, resiliency, and community. because you got to have the courage to just step into the STEM major to begin with. You got to have the courage to know that, the next 4 to 6 years is going to be rough compared to, maybe some of your non-STEM counterparts. The resiliency to, make it all the way, to go through some long nights of studying. You might have to give up a few weekends of going out if that means passing your class. Finding a community, whether that's a club, one of the ethnic clubs here on campus, friends, other peers in your classroom. All those things together all kind of come into one big conglomerate of what you need to survive almost to finish your degree.
But I feel like every Black student needs, or any student in general needs they need a community of students, a community of faculty and of course the BSC, to make them feel welcome and supported and resourceful. So when I'm looking for something to eat, the food pantry, or if I'm looking to go into research, C3, just being resourceful and letting them know that there's many opportunities on campus. If you know of any, letting your students know, because I feel like that's really, really important.
Just emphasizing what they both said, community is important. Like I've said this whole panel, I would not have gone through without my little group. I would not have survived without them. So community is important. And also just, let's see, just like the basic, the passion and the drive to want to do this. Because if you have the passion and drive and you have that community, you will feel unstoppable and you will feel like you can take off the world.
I believe that as a Black student at CSTEM, I think what we need more of is just overall community, like they said, that's very important. The BSC loves community. We dwell on community. And I think that we would really benefit with more people, like we need people with a drive to help other students. And I think we would benefit from like a lot more voices similar to mine that could make events like this possible, because I think both having the drive to do something and the determination, the perseverance to even succeed in your degree will take you so far, but having people that like are within your group that are able to say something, stand out, make sure that their voices are known so that we can all together as a community bring forward issues that we want to fix, that could take us places that we have never been before. So I think those three things are very important.
So I'm hearing community, both in like community, sense of belonging to a community, knowing that you belong here, and a community voice to continue dialogues, to continue building events, and to continue learning. So before we wrap up, I just want to thank you all for spending an hour and a half with us. This has been an event in a long time in the making, and really we need to give a huge round of applause to both Yatunde for organizing, inspiring this event, and our student panelists for having the courage to share with us. I know that I have learned a lot from you all today, so thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. And I have to say, as second-year faculty, I am trying to hold back tears at just how many of my colleagues have showed up for our students. It means a lot to both our students and myself. So thank you so much, CSTEM, for showing up, for sitting with us, for learning, for asking questions, being reflective, for just really being committed to making our spaces more inclusive and supportive for our Black scholars. And Ariel is going to point us to some resources on our campus to continue dialogue and to continue growing.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. I echo everything that you said. We definitely told the student panelists that participated that you would embrace them in classrooms, because some of them were worried about retaliation, and I ensured that would not happen to them with their public sharing. So I'm sure you will support them and support us in that. So thank you. I also just want to remind you that the university library a few years ago created the anti-racist guide for our university. So you can find that on their guide list on their homepage. If not, we'll make sure it's a part of the resources. Our student health and counseling services also created some culturally relevant guides and resources for mental health and Black mental health as well that you can read about and know about for your students that will be supportive. I want to echo that the Black Student Center is here in this building on the 4th floor. If you haven't ever been, please visit. Although our current director, John Rollins, is leaving us and his last day is Friday, we do have Chanel Watkins. Please stand up, Chanel, who will be the continuity in that place under the direction of Dr. Colavant. I think that's very important. And then I want to just echo John in saying, if you have not yet signed up for a listening session, they're very similar. There are spaces to share about experiences on campus. There are specific spaces for CSTEM faculty, spaces for other faculty of color or white identifying faculty. There's space for students, Black students specifically, students of different races and ethnicities, students of accessibility and disability statuses. There are students so there should be a space for almost everyone. If there is a space missing and you think there should be a space, please let the Office of Inclusive Excellence know. We will do our best to provide something where folks can share. I don't know if I can say that particular space because we've been working on that for a while, but we can do something where you can still participate, which I think is important. John is leaving. I'm going to make him say some words.
No, just thank you all so much for being here this afternoon and for listening to our students. I think it's important to be able to center student voices, in particular, the voices of students from marginalized communities. So please continue to reach out. In addition to the BSC, I also, of course, want to make sure I mention the other student life centers for identity, inclusion, and empowerment. We know that, as you saw the statistics, this, of course, the data spoke specifically to Black student experiences, but you saw that other student experiences from other marginalized groups are not very far behind where our students are in terms of their feelings and their sense of belonging on campus. And so our Latinx Center, Cross Cultural Center, the Women and Gender Equity Center, and the LGBTQA Pride Center are also here as resources, and of course, the Office of Inclusive Excellence. So again, thank you to the panelists. Thank you to Dr. Rice for all your hard work and advocacy. Thank you to Dean Trishman and everyone who helped to make this happen, the AV team, and everyone have a great afternoon.